It's great to be here. And let me just kind of set the stage and sort of MIT CIO Symposium tradition. I'll have each of our panelists introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their company. There are mics in the 3 aisles here. We're going to try to, at about 15 minutes to go, I'll have questions come into the audience. If not, I've got enough questions here to keep us a couple of hours busy. But what we're going to do, as Kathleen was saying, we're going to talk about the intersection of business and technology. And it's kind of incredible that we're now in the 13th year of the 21st century, midway through that. It was just kind of astounding. And the conference title is Piloting the Untethered Enterprise, so to speak. And we're going to get into that in a moment. But what I want to do first, we'll start with Richard Soley. Richard, will you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about OMG, and we'll come down to Jeff and Scott and Shouvik. So.
Sure. Thanks, Gary. I was one of the people that put my hand up the second time, so I spent a little bit of time at MIT. I'm kind of a slow learner. I spent 11 years here in the 70s and 80s.
It took you that long to graduate?
Yeah, I was, as I said, not that bright, so that's why they made me a CEO. I was a technical director. They said, we're not very good at that. Maybe you could be a CEO. OMG, the Object Management Group, it does not stand for anything else, by the way. I don't want to hear it. We're founded in 1989 when OMG didn't mean anything at all. I did have a teenage daughter in the late 90s who reminded me of some of the other things it might mean. We are one of the world's largest software standards organizations, although our focus is not on the development of standards per se, but on the creation of markets. We help birth the middleware market and the software modeling market, and we're now in about 25 vertical markets, from healthcare to finance to telecommunications and manufacturing. About 500 companies, 4,000 people working together on intercorporate agreements on what might be called software standards in many different vertical markets.
Great. Jeff Markley?
Let's see, I'm a little unusual. I founded the company. I've actually never worked for
Please look out into the audience.
I've never worked for a large organization. I've always created my own organizations, and so we're in the data center business. We started in 1991 building mission-critical facilities for telecommunication companies and evolving into providing the same services for enterprise organizations, and now entering into cloud services. So anyway, we're one of the leading companies in this region, and pleased to have many of the great Boston companies and household names as our clients.
Thank you, Jeff. Scott?
Good morning. I'm Scott Griffith. I'm the chairman and CEO at a company that's based here in Cambridge called Zipcar. It's nice to have this opportunity to tell our story to some people that may have heard part of it or none of it.
How many have been a Zipcar customer?
Wow. I guess we're getting somewhere.
Preaching to the choir, Scott.
So if you use our service, you know maybe a little bit about what I'll tell you. But I've been at in the CEO job probably for some of the same reasons our first guest described. I wasn't that good at other stuff. I've been at the CEO job at Zipcar now for over 9 years. It was a very small, mostly Cambridge-based company, barely in New York and DC in 2003 when I came in. Today we have over 700,000 users of our service. We're in 18 major metro markets and over 250 universities in the US, Canada, the UK, and now Spain through an acquisition we did earlier this year in Spain. And I think of our business as kind of 3 different aspects of both strategic sort of focus, but also operational focus. Marketing is a big one. Logistics management is another big part of our business, and IT, or information technology and data, is the third sort of leg of the stool that we have to manage. We happen to have a lot of cars, but I don't think of our business as a car business. And reason I make that sort of 3-leg of the stool point is we talked this morning, as I think about the 9 years at Zipcar, information and data has sort of permeated across all 3 key legs of our strategic stool. We used to be able to think about them in sort of more discrete silos, and now it's really all become very integrated, and we'll talk more about that probably as the morning proceeds. So it's made a major change in how we deliver the service and where we add value to the business and the customer.
Thank you, Scott. Shouvik?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So this is my 7th MIT CIO conference, so I'm delighted to be back. Also, I finally get a chance to cold call on some of my professors who are in the audience. So,
You mean complete those courses that you didn't complete?
Yes, exactly.
Get the grades on the book?
So I'm delighted to be here. A little bit about Valtech. It's publicly traded in Paris. It's global, and the 2 words associated with it are digital marketing and agile. So those are the 2 words. I was a Sloan Fellow over here. Over the years, Valtech has had a close association with MIT, with different organizations, primarily the Global Lab and the India Lab, to build out the global practice. And we are about a little more than 2,000 people, spread equally across Europe, US, and Asia Pacific.
Great. Gentlemen, we got a good cross-section of different businesses. And as I was sharing with you yesterday, here we are in the middle part of the year. The stock exchange indexes, some of them are up. The only one is NASDAQ, but Facebook will bring that down soon. The FTSE's down 7%. Hang Seng and Dow Jones are basically flat. Just last week, Ken Goldstein, who's the chief economist at the Conference Board, said this about the economy. It's still struggling to gain momentum. Growth is slow but choppy, and customers, execs, and investors are looking for more progress. It all makes for a risky business environment and presents an intense set of unique leadership challenges for CEOs. So in this untethered enterprise that's uncertain, it's regulated, there's risk, you're being forced to globalize, digitize, and how are you doing the monetize stuff? How are things going? Just briefly, how are you feeling about the economy here in the mid part of the 2012? Shouvik?
So where we sit, I think it's, in terms of digital marketing, there's a great opportunity as far as that specific area is concerned. With respect to our customer base, obviously there is a level of uncertainty, but in terms of technology investments, I do see an increasing level of technology investment, in the areas that we deal in. From a company perspective, I think the challenge is to manage the brand. How do you manage the brand as it evolves? Obviously, the competitive space is very challenging. And I think the other aspect is the employees, because you have the legacy, what I call the mainframe employees, and then you have the iPhone employees. So how do you manage your internal culture as you go through your own internal transformation?
We're going to talk more about that. Anybody else care to share with the audience how they're feeling about the economy?
Sure. I mean, I could tell you last year sucked. It was the end of a recession for us is very well defined. As the recession peaks, market caps fall. You get more M&A activity, and we lose members. Real simple. And since membership is 65% of our revenue, that's real noticeable, and was real noticeable last year. However, we've been on a very clear upswing since the beginning of this year. I agree with Shouvik that we're seeing increased strategic expenditure in IT, and we're seeing more organizations understand that their businesses are digital when they didn't understand it before. The best example is always financial institutions. The banks are computer companies, right? I mean, you look at Citigroup with 20,000 developers. It's an IT company. But I think that's more and more true, and I agree with Shouvik that digital supply chains are not the thing of the future, they're the thing of the present. And I think, Scott, you made the same point. That's the way things move, and if you don't keep up with that, you've completely missed the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Richard. Scott, how are things at Zipcar?
So maybe I'll take a little bit of the consumer perspective, because we target mostly the consumer. We have 10,000 small businesses who tend to behave a lot like the individual consumer as well. Zipcar is now in the UK through an acquisition now in Spain, so global has become a much bigger question for us. We don't want to mess that up or get it wrong. Economists define the short term and the long term from economic perspectives. CEOs define short term and long term as the difference between their tenure and the tenure of the next CEO. So if you get this wrong, you end up in the long term bucket as the last CEO. I think what we're seeing is, and I always benchmark it back to 2008, early 2009, when things were really tough. Obviously, we're pretty far ahead of that. We were in a big trough from the consumer's perspective. Discretionary income and unemployment sort of seem to be in free fall. We've definitely hit bottom and feel like, at least in this country, we're starting to pull the nose up a little bit. And we see that in spending at Zipcar. We saw all-time lows in spend per member per month or per quarter or anything over the 08 and 09. So consumer spending for us says something. It says the consumer wallet is shrinking, and so while that can help us, we tend to sign people up that want to use our service because we can save a lot of money for people that don't own a car because they use our service instead. On the other hand, if there's just not as much discretionary income, they're not taking discretionary trips in our cars. They're still taking the kids to the doctor's appointment or running out to Waltham to meet the VC in one of our cars, but they're not going down to the Cape or going to Vermont to ski or go to the Cape for the weekend. So that's had a big impact. And the game changer now is Europe, what really happens. Even a quarter or 2 quarters ago, we're investing heavily now into European growth. This is sort of changing by the week at the moment. It's hard to predict what's going to happen in Europe. The good news for us is we focus on major centers of economic activity, even in Europe. We're going to be in the major cities, and we're going to focus our business in the major parts of those cities. So for us, IT investment, back to the theme of this whole discussion, IT investment is key to scale and leverage, and our marketing all comes from big investments in IT. So we haven't slowed that down at all. We are concerned mostly about Europe and how China might impact overall trade, and that impacts our business. As a public company, now we have to get that right. We went public a little over a year ago and had a honeymoon that was slightly longer than Facebook, but it's been an interesting ride.
First day than Mark did?
But we'll see what happens for him too.
I wouldn't make too much fun of Mark. I mean, not only did he make $20 billion last week, but he got married.
Yeah, but show up with a suit. Give me a break. Leave the hoodie at home when you're talking to investment
We'd all wear a
analysts.
hoodie if it would raise our stock
Yeah,
price
at $20 billion, he can wear whatever he wants.
Guys, this 45 minutes is going to go fast, so I have to jump in here. Jeff Markley, I assume business is doing well?
Yeah, we're in a better market, I think, than most. We've seen continual growth for a long time. I think because our business is capital intensive, that our clients, like the fact that we're spending the money and they don't have to spend as much money. But I look back and I'm so grateful over the years of the decisions that we've made many years ago. The way we financed our business, we resisted, time after time, the billions of dollars that Wall Street wanted to throw at us, and all the handcuffs that came with it. And we don't have outside investors. We don't have, a board standing over us saying, make money, make money, make money.
Change jobs.
90 days comes around pretty quick, doesn't it, Scott?
I'm not going to lie. I have a pretty nice situation, but it really, everything boils down to, for me, it's, can I make our customers happy? Mm-hmm. Can we make their life better? Do they want to do business with us? And it boils down to those decisions that we don't have anybody telling us, you have to do this, you have to do this, so we can make, longer term strategic moves, for the long run rather than say, we got to do this today. And, we're concerned always about the economy, but we've seen, continual growth, and I think it's all about, if you take care of your customer, then, you're going to be fine.
Okay, so we got 3 goods and getting good and doing well. About a year ago, a little over a year ago, I had an opportunity in a format like this to sit down with Sam Palmisano. And I asked him the question I'm going to ask you now. I said, Sam, what does it mean to be global? I was just kind of thinking of this question. Many of you mentioned global. And he thought for a moment, he said, you're a global company if a third or more of your direct reports are not in the company headquarters. So how would you guys define, anybody want to just jump in, how do you define being global? You're going to Europe. Are you a global company now? Zipcar?
I don't know if we're global. We think very much globally because we have to build a platform that works every market we want to go into. So that, to me, defines global because it has to work. But I'm with the last response. We have to get it right for the customer in every market we're in. The brand has to feel the same. Mm-hmm. The technology platform has to work the same. And to do that, you really do have to think about global operations if you're going to operate in Europe. And we're looking at Asia as well. So we'll truly be a global market once we move out of Europe, I think. And it redefines, I mean, I spend more of my time out of the country now than I ever used to in Asia and in Europe, looking at trying to understanding what does it mean to be local in those markets so that we build the right global platform. It's not about being global, it's about making sure the platform can localize to each market.
It's really being local, and if you add up all,
That's
global.
that's actually the important point. I think it's a funny answer Sam gave you, because I think being global is about your customers all over the world thinking of you as a local company, a company that's relevant to them locally, a company that responds to their needs and gives them products or services that are, I mean, ABB puts it best. They're local globally. I love that advertising.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. And because on the sake of time here, I want to get into some other questions with you guys. And I found this out. These gentlemen were very good because we came up with a set of questions last week, and I changed them all around and sent it to them last night. And this is one of the reasons why I found this incredible study from MIT Sloan that came out in March of this year. And it was by 4 researchers, Sunil Mithas, Ali Tafti, Indranil Bradhan, and Jimin Goel. And they basically said, Scott, you were mentioning about the investments in technology, as were the other panelists, but they said investments in information technology, because it often involves deployment of novel technologies, offer room for creativity and innovation and has a greater impact that can have, so investment in technology can have a greater impact on a company's profits than comparable spending on either advertising or research and development. So here's the question. There's a rich alum from MIT. He or she has a check for $1 million. They want to write out to Valtech or Zipcar or Markley or OMG. Where would you place that money? Pick one. Would you pick it? Would you place it in IT? Would you place it in advertising? Would you place it in R&D? Jeff?
We don't advertise, so I know
All right,
it's not
now he's
going
down
there.
to 2.
I know it's not going there.
You can't keep it to yourself, but so which of the 2 would you pick?
I'd go into technology, but boy, I hope they're writing a bigger check than that, because I've probably spent that already today.
It was just, I could make it. I could do an Austin Powers here. $1 bazillion dollars.
It's more like that, yeah. So yeah, you wouldn't believe.
All right, so IT.
Yeah.
Dr. Soley, where would you put it?
I'd put it not with him.
You'd run out the door and get a Zipcar and leave, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think it would go to the Caribbean somewhere. No, I think it would go in customer-facing IT, absolutely,
Okay.
because that's what they recognize, that's what they see the value of.
Shouvik?
I think building platforms for the client, but if it's an MIT alum, R&D would be the easy answer. But in general, I think bigger customers, and depending on the type of organization you're from, if you show your customer that your differentiation is based on the amount of research you're putting in, specifically in the areas that are important for them, I think they value that, and you can differentiate yourself.
Okay. Scott?
I think a big dose of it would probably go toward customer-facing technology. We'll get into this in a little bit, but our business has moved from literally no reservation activity or customer interaction on mobile to now a majority of our business is being run on mobile devices. So that's been a big change for us. I would try to figure out a way also to look at team and talent development as part of the investment. One of the things, big learning for me going from $2 million to now a $300 million run rate in the business is it really is all about the team. It sounds, a lot of people say that, but in team now, we've got little offices all over the place. So we don't have an HR department, or we don't have support structure in every office that we have, where we have 18 major markets now. We have a home office here, and we got an office in Wimbledon, UK, that's our home office for the EU operation.
Can I go over and visit next month?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, stop by.
Thank you.
But trying to invest in team for us means, again, technology, because we can't do training and management development, talent development through, we're not all in one office, so we use IT tools, information systems now to try to do talent development, education, career pathing. All that really happens through a system that we've developed, and it's become critically important so that the team in Spain that we just bought can understand our business as well as the team in San Francisco that's been around since 2005. And for us, that's a big technology investment as much as whatever we're facing the customer with.
So Shouvik, could I ask you that question? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I lost my train of thought listening to these great comments here. You kind of all touched about it. I like the customer-facing aspect that several of you mentioned, but about 3 weeks ago, Gartner released their CEO and senior business exec survey, and by ratio, almost like what you had here on the panel today, 2 to 1, CEOs said they're increasing their investment in IT. And Jorge Lopez, who's a distinguished analyst there, said the intention to invest, particularly, you'll like this, Jeff, in the cloud, in mobile, and CRM is comparatively healthy. So where are you guys investing this year? Shouvik?
So we are mainly into platform technologies. Anything that enables the marketing process is the primary line of investment. And what we've done is we've actually hired a couple of our customers as our full-time employees in senior positions to drive that process so that we are more aligned to the market, but that's where most of our money is going.
Okay. Richard?
Well, our sort of investment is a different structure because we're a not-for-profit standards organization, but I will tell you that we're seeing enormous investment in cloud, more than mobile, because of, well, for several different reasons, but the most obvious being the CapEx versus OpEx decision. I mean, that's exactly the point that Jeff was making. And if you're trying to move off of CapEx and move it onto Jeff's lap, that's the obvious thing to do. And our Cloud Standards Customer Council is the fastest growing group. We are community managers, basically, and that is the fastest growing group we have ever done in 23 years.
Let me follow up with you before we get to Jeff and Scott on that. I was with a CIO a couple months ago, and I was moderating a vendor meeting of customer panels, a customer advisory group, and the CIO for a large financial institution took out of his wallet a blank check, wrote $500,000, went over to the CEO of the company, and said, it's easier for me to write you a check than it is, and I can just CapEx it, than it is for me to go back and OpEx. Are you finding customers are having a difficult time transitioning from CapEx to OpEx when they go to the cloud?
Not necessarily. We're actually seeing two different worlds. There's the private cloud world, and it reminds me of a cartoon I just saw. It may have even been in your magazine, which shows the CEO walking over to the CIO saying, how's our transition to private cloud going? And the CIO has just taken off the sign in front of the door that says data center and replaced it with a sign that says private cloud. That's... Maybe it wasn't in CIO. There's that world. I think the more interesting world is the public cloud world, which seems to be kind of stalled at the moment, and the hybrid world, which is getting all the excitement and interest. And so no, in that world, I actually see, yeah, sure, the CIO may have trouble moving from CapEx to OpEx, but out at the tendrils of the organization, there's the guy that can buy 100 hours of CPU time off of Amazon, I'm sorry, off of Markley Group for exactly for a price that's well within his own budgets, not having to get signatures from anywhere. It's exactly like the transition from mainframes to minis, minis to PCs. We're now seeing PCs out to the cloud. So sure, it might be more difficult in his budgets for the CIO to move from CapEx to OpEx, but now he's got the same problem as he's got in a million other places of bring your own device and every other thing that's hitting him all at once, that the decisions are being made not in the IT organization, but in his customers, in-house customers' organizations.
Yeah, it's if around the top of the rotunda here, there's a sponsor today that Richard just mentioned, bring your own device. They've added another letter to that. It's BYOAD. Bring your own authorized device. Stop by, I forget the name of the company. Jeff, where are you placing your bets at Markley Group?
Well, you know, over the years past, we really spent a lot of money, a lot of effort bringing all that mobility. We view it as our role is to bring all the global connectivity at the lowest latencies, at the, you know, the most redundant, robust networks. So, you know, in bringing 50 global type, you know, networks together, and having done that, then we're viewing the cloud as what we're doing now and going forward, and you know, we're putting a lot of money into it, and
I would hope so.
Yeah, we think it's here to stay.
But you don't have to tell the rest of the world every 9 days, so we really don't know.
Right.
Only kidding. Scott, where's Zipcar? Where are you placing your bets?
I think I sort of covered this. Internationalization and then localization of the platform is a big investment for us. You know, going to the UK is international, but becoming a true international network across Europe requires a different infrastructure and a big change to our platform than we had. So we can localize, as I said earlier. The other place is mobile. Okay. Across the board, just a lot of mobile investment. We're sort of touching the cloud, we've got a lot of very confidential private information, driver's license information, activity, where people are in cars. We have to be very careful about privacy. But static images, using mobile apps that now can access photography about locations or some special feature of a car where the button is. We use photography to do that, and we're starting to push a lot of that to the cloud now.
In the sake of time, I want to stay with you on this in terms of, we were going to do slides for this presentation, and I was going to put a picture on the stage of the E-Trade baby, because Zipcar has an interesting aspect of its customer base. 95% of them use smartphones. So I suspect a lot of the people in the audience here, their company is going to have similar customer sets out over the next 5-10 years. How difficult is it? What challenges and opportunities does it present to you as a CEO when almost 100% of your customers are on smartphones?
Things are moving so fast. And customer expectations, so here's where the data point comes from. We surveyed our members about 9 months ago now, and then we did the same survey about almost 3 years ago, about 2.5 years ago from the survey I'll cite. 95% of the results of the survey 6 months ago said they carry smartphones now, and it was about half Android phones and about half iPhones. BlackBerry was the big loser. If you go back 2 years before that, about half of our customer base carried a mobile device that was smart, and about half of that was an iPhone, and about half of that was a BlackBerry. So BlackBerry basically gave all their share to Android in the Zipcar membership base over literally about 2.5 years. It was an amazing shift. So of course we were in the middle of thinking about what are we going to do on the BlackBerry, and we dropped everything and said, Android apps next. We got to do that. So, but what that's telling us is our customer doesn't want to interact on the desktop or using even text messaging or touch-tone phones anymore. That was the least common denominator a few years ago for us. That's where we designed, the base case user was somebody either sitting on a laptop or a desktop and occasionally calling us through an automated phone system with touch-tone dialing features. The least common denominator now has become the Android and the iPhone at Zipcar. 60% of our activity with the customer is done through an Android or an iPhone today.
Don't you think that's just because every BlackBerry user is actually just driving his own Cadillac now? Speaking as a BlackBerry user.
That's why it took him 11 years to get through MIT. But anyway, I want to stay with the smartphone thing. Thank you, Scott. One of the reasons I changed the question set is when I do things like this, I just collect data for months. And I found this column that was in The Economist, Schumpeter, and it was talking about, the title was called Slaves to the Smartphone. And what it talked about was the downside of hyperconnectivity. In fact, there's a woman right here in Cambridge or Boston, Leslie Perot, who just came out with a book last week called Sleeping with My Smartphone. And talking about how, in some respects, hyperconnectivity can have a downside to productivity. And obviously, Eric Schmidt read the column because at BU last weekend, Mr. Schmitz told everybody to because the column also said take some time off on the phone. So Schmidt goes, take an hour a day and turn that thing off. Take your eyes off the screen and look in the eyes of the person you love. Have a conversation, a real conversation. God, he sounds like Dr. Phil. I mean, but the serious question, Shouvik, ask you, are there downside to being too hyperconnectivity?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually have had a research firm come in and study productivity of our employees, starting from Bangalore to Paris to Dallas. So in a Rangers game on a Thursday afternoon, definite productivity impact, because we follow an agile way of delivering to our customers. And it's surprising. So in India, we found out a data point, which was women's productivity was 31% more on days that cricket was played, because men follow cricket a lot more. So we actually followed this because we get paid on agile transformation.
That's why there's so many more cricket matches now in India.
Exactly. So definitely that's one. And I think in some specific parts of it, right, you have to figure out smart ways to limit it, because in research and development organizations, it's about concentration. You just can't keep looking at your email, because then most of your day will be all a blur. I replied to 75 emails rather than work on a specific idea.
Okay, anybody else want to briefly comment? We got about 15 minutes, Al. Is that about right? We got more. Okay, great. comments?
I
Are we
can
too
give a
hyperly
little-
connected,
Just a quick
Scott?
update on the connected side. So the survey I was just talking about, we asked 2 other questions that I think are relevant to this that are pretty interesting data points. One, we asked, what are your top brands? What do you think about the most? And 5 years ago or so, when we last asked that, a car company brand or a car model was in almost everybody's top 3 or 4 mentions. Didn't show up this time. Literally did not show up. What was their top brand? They're worried about what device they're carrying. Apple obviously showed up a lot, Android or HTC phones, Samsung phones. They worried a lot about iPads. Electronic devices showed up. Sneakers showed up. Games, Xbox kind of games and gaming systems showed up. So yes, our membership base skews a bit young, but the average age is 35 and a half. This isn't 12-year-olds or 18-year-olds. So if the average age of 13 and a half are forgetting about cars, and then we asked them, do you ever find yourself not taking a trip in a car or not physically going somewhere because you're interacting with somebody else? Have you actually made that choice to just not go visit them and do it electronically? 68% of the respondents said that they had done that more than once in the last quarter. And to me, that's a major change. I mean, architects are worried about this. Road construction planners are thinking about this. I mean, is car use going to start to go down because this interaction is good? So it's good for the atmosphere. There's less CO2 when people aren't in cars. Is it overall a good thing for society? I think that's a tough question. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But it all feels like it's good for our business, so I'm happy with it. So.
That's good. Richard?
Well, I hark back to...
BlackBerry?
No, not just the BlackBerry, but there was an MIT spinoff in 1984 called PictureTel. Pictel at the time, then PictureTel, and now it's part of Polycom. And I was involved in that team right at the beginning. We thought we were doing away with business travel. And now I fly 300,000 miles a year and get 400 to 700 people together quarterly to meet face to face. So in one sense, I failed. Also, in the other sense, however, it's nice not to pay a mortgage. But what we learned is people still need to meet face to face in order to be productive later on. And I think probably Shouvik, I bet your research shows that. You can have very successful relationships by Skype, by teleconference, by even just plain old telephone and WebEx, but you have to meet at some point, and that accelerates the process. In the standards business, it accelerates it enormously, and by the way, not in the meeting, but in the hallways. So I don't actually believe that we're ever going to see a world where there isn't physical movement. I think that the electronic means of communication are additive, not a replacement. So I wouldn't worry. I think the price of gas has more to do with the car rentals than anything else.
Thank you. Jeff? We too connected?
I don't think so. I see more benefits than the downside for sure. Of course, sometimes it's rude and people are focused on their phone more than they should be with meeting with customers and talking to customers, and it's made us maybe sometimes a little less efficient, sometimes more, but it's been critical for us and made us be able to respond to issues faster. And for myself, I love being able to jot things down and send it out right away. So I don't see the downside, as much as the positive.
You should do a quick survey. How many of you left your phones on when they said, please turn your phone off? How many of you, oh, sorry. No.
Who's moderating this panel?
I told you I would
I'll
immoderate
come over
it.
and slap you on the side of the head. That's a good question, Richard. I'm only kidding. Richard and I have known each other for decades, so we can do that. Scott, I just wanted, before we leave this, last week, I was with some folks from Microsoft, and I saw Win 8. And you're kind of like a forerunner in terms of you're seeing what the platforms, where they're going, what have you. Are you ramping for Win 8 phones later this year?
No.
No?
When the customer tells us to do that, we'll do it.
Okay. Just wanted to ask. Question, how many in the audience are CIOs?
Did you like what you saw?
Yes, I did.
That's a good data point to know.
Yeah. In fact, unnamed vendor, I saw some interesting stuff that's going to out iPad. But anyway, how many CIOs in the audience? Okay, so a bunch. I just wanted to set that stage here. because you saw in the question set, I wanted to ask you all about the strategic role of the CIO. Later today, I don't know if Mark is in the house yet, Mark McDonald, one of the smartest guys that follows the CIO function from Gartner, he'll be speaking. And last November, he had this to say about the role of the CIO. And succinctly, he said, CIOs are still doing the dishes. 2 months later, our magazine, we do the State of the CIO survey each year, and incredibly, only 7% of CIOs, we gave them 5 answers to ask, what does the rest of the business think about IT? Only 7% said IT is perceived as a business game changer. And then the Economist Business Intelligence Group, a couple of months ago, went back and, on a secondary research basis, looked at all the publicly traded companies in the world and found only 4% of CEOs or managing directors got to that position through the tech role. So my question to you is this. What's your impression of the CIO role or the senior IT role? You don't have to say it's your company, just overall in terms of your impression. And possibly more important, do you see, with people provisioning, IT execs used to do 3 things: procure, provision, maintain. With provisioning going up in the cloud and coming in through BYOAD, down here, what's the role of CIO? Is this function going to survive the decade? Solely, I'm going to go to you on that.
Was that a threat?
No.
There's no question it will. And we've seen, as I said, we've seen this transition before from mainframe to mini, from mini to PC, and now we're seeing PC out to the edges again with cloud computing, because the OpEx nature means that the guy with $25 a budget can still buy a couple hundred hours of CPU time, obviously with the Markley group. It'll cost you $20.
They say money can drive in a Zipcar and then have enough money to travel to Paris.
There you go.
You got it all set here.
The point is, that means there is yet again a very important role for those of you who raised your hands when Gary asked who's a CIO, because those people out at the edge are only going to care about their own function. They're not going to care about integration with the rest of the company. So you're going to need to reintegrate their information again. You're going to need to solve the security problem for them again. You're going to need to be able to roll up their data again. All the sorts of things that happened at each of the previous transitions has to be done all over again. So yeah, it's going to survive. Unfortunately, it means doing the dishes a lot more again. And that's unfortunate. I thought the statistic you were going to mention was the number of CIOs that report to CEOs as opposed to CFOs, which is falling. Right? We're seeing more and more CIOs, again, reporting to CFOs. I don't know that it's that important. I think what's important is, are they involved in the CXO suites, informal discussions, and where the company's going strategically, and part of the decision of where the company's going strategically. And if they're not, then they're going to keep doing the dishes, and CIO will continue to mean, as one CIO friend of mine said to me, his CEO came to him and said, "You know what CIO stands for, right? Career is over."
Well, there's got another couple. The latest, you heard it, is Cloud Integration Officer.
Yeah. That sounds better. Yeah. I like Chief Innovation Officer.
Chief Innovation.
And partially because standards are the basis for innovation. And that's the opportunity for the CIO to bring in standards, both local and global, and make changes to the organization.
Good point. I want to get everybody on the
Yep.
record here. Jeff?
I agree with what Richard said. I think, clearly you can just look at it very similar to a CFO. If a CFO becomes an accountant and he's just doing his function, his dishes, or whatever you want to call it, is he adding value to the organization? That's the job he's supposed to do, and you need it done. But is he in there, helping drive the business, making it more successful, getting more customers, getting more, benefit to, the costs, et cetera. But so I view the CIO role critical as technology and driving the business, but it's really up to the individual, We know people in the room here who've gone from CIOs to Chief Innovation Officers and people who are making changes in their organization. I want to surround myself with, brilliant people who are going to make our company stronger, better, and get us into, new opportunities and make our customers grow and be happy and want to do business with us.
Great. Scott?
You know, I think we did our roadshow last year, and we talked about trying to use information as a competitive advantage for our business. We're a first mover. We've got a great brand. We're not IP protected all that well. I mean, how can you protect a Zipcar from an IP perspective? So we have to keep moving and keep innovating the experience. So from my perspective, whether it's, you call it what you want, that position, CIO, whatever the lead technology positions, if there are two in the company, they have to be a seat at the table at our company, and I think that's really important at almost every company out there now, because information is a competitive advantage if you use it in the way we're trying to use it now. We know more about our customer than anybody that's going to enter this business. Hertz or Avis or one of the big car manufacturers, two of the big car manufacturers are now entering our category directly with a service. Well, you know, we did 4 million reservations last year. And you know, shame on us if we didn't mine all the information out of those reservations and figure out how to become a better company and drive a better experience and be more profitable and drive a lower cost structure. And so for us, information is integral to all that. So it's a seat at the table job, and I think every company should be thinking about information as a competitive advantage. And that says to me that the information, the top information job is going to be more strategic. So they have to think more strategically and be more business focused and understand business cases and ROI and NPVs, and it becomes bigger and broader. And so I think you may have to innovate yourself if you're in that position, if you're not thinking that way now. But you'll have to go through some personal innovation to sort of step up to that level. But that's the kind of person I would hire to really help our business get to that level.
Good. Shouvik, for the sake of time, same kind of question, but with a different slant. We were on the phone a week or so ago. I was mentioning in that conversation, again, Gartner, by 2016, the chief marketing officer will have a bigger IT budget than the CIO. Comment?
Yes, so I was getting ready for my answer to that.
All right, great. Answer the other one first. I was just doing it in terms of time. Great. Do the CIO first. And then we got 2 minutes. Okay.
So I'll take a radical view. I think the role as it stands today, by the end of the decade, that role will be significantly marginalized. So what we do see is that the CMO having a lot more decision-making powers. The other thing, the CMO organization today has 3 sets of assets. One is its own employees who have a lot of technology-savvy knowledge. Number 2 is ad agencies and marketing agencies who've been working closely, and they also have very strong IT capabilities. And number 3 are legacy IT firms that actually are providing a lot of value in educating the marketing organization. So I would say unless the transformation happens, and further to your point about the role becoming a customer's innovation officer, and the other thing, I think in terms of innovating yourself as a CIO, I would say it would be becoming closer to your industry, the industry that you're in. The management would expect much more deeper expertise from the CIO or the role as it evolves.
All said. Richard, I'm going to go to you for a 30-second last question, then we just got to wrap up. Skills that, one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys, skills in mobile security and social media. And when I was walking through the Great Hall, whatever you guys call it here at MIT, coming over here, because I basically parked at the Longfellow Bridge. Because I can't get parking spots near Kresge Auditorium. Then you say, well, of course you can, right next door. But I saw...
It's a skill issue.
It's a skill. I went through MIT in less than 11 years. No, I didn't. But I saw ads like Linux hackers wanted, not your mama's PhD. Briefly, are you seeing a skills shortage at all at OMG in terms of mobile security, social media, cloud?
So not just OMG, but I'll give you a direct answer. I'm also an active angel investor in a bunch of different companies, and one of them is looking for people with sentiment analysis skills, so basically social networking skills. And the obvious place to look was the MIT Media Lab. I have great friends there, so connected with a bunch, and they said, yeah, you and 4,000 other companies. The moment everyone graduates, he's got a job, a year before he graduates. We're lucky if he actually stays around long enough to graduate.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a skill shortage in those areas, no question. Cloud computing I'd add to the list as well.
Oh, so I apologize to the audience. You guys will be around for a while. We can have some questions you can ask after the session here. But I want to thank Shouvik Bhattacharyya from Valtech, Scott Griffith from Zipcar, Jeff Markley from the Markley Group, and Dr. Richard Soley of MIT from Oh My God standards. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh.
thank you, Dave. We've been afforded the opportunity because you're so engaging here. Any questions from the audience? Just step up to the mic. Do we have a question?
We're obviously
I think
too
someone's
eloquent.
come. Nope, that's a. No questions. Come on down. Someone's got to have a question.
There's a question.
Here we go. A younger version of Dan O'Shaughnessy's coming up to the mic.
Here you go. Hi, my name is Charles Herder. I graduated from MIT a while ago. I'm actually co-founder of a small company right now. My question for you is, with all of this untethered enterprise, you want to be able to make sure you realize the promise of that. How do you simultaneously maintain the security and integrity of your business and your information assets?
That's a good question. And I'll amplify it by the Symantec study that I mentioned to you guys, where Symantec put 50 smartphones all around the country, purposely lost them. And these phones were wired, so to speak, and 98% of the phones, people accessed the information. So who wants to take it? Well, to one guy on this question. Who wants to take it?
I'll take it.
Okay, Shouvik.
So for you as a co-founder, if it's R&D people, you definitely want to limit and define policies, because the last thing you want is your head of research and development losing, the mobile phone with a lot of data on it. So I think from that standpoint, the other thing, of course, you have to enforce very strong policies, because at the end of the day, it's like losing your war plan on the battlefield, right, in terms of the power of the mobile phone today. So you have to define to especially your key employees, that what amount of data can be accessed from the mobile phone. And it may sound restrictive, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Thank you, Shouvik. Question here?
Hi there. My name is Tim Doria. I'm the founder of Boston Decision over at the Cambridge Innovation Center. We do data mining, text mining, sentiment analysis like you mentioned, to help businesses create that strategic competitive advantage. And my question is for Scott. Scott, you had mentioned that Zipcar does a lot of data mining of its subscribers. And I'm curious if you can give some insight to some of the impact that data mining has had in terms of strategic changes you've made to your businesses as a result of that analysis.
I'd say 2 or 3 major ways that we've used it so far. We use it in aggregate. We're not trying to figure out where you go in a car or what you're doing. What we're trying to do is understand who's joining the service and how are they using the cars and when. And so understanding patterns within reservation activity for us has been really helpful. And we've used that to help drive price product bundles. We've moved demand out of weekends into weekdays when we have a lot of excess capacity. And this is like a hotel or an airline. It's pretty much a fixed cost business with the fleet that sits out there. So to the extent we can normalize utilization across day parts and week parts and take the seasonality out of the business, that's been very helpful. So understanding who's signing up and then doing a better job of targeting them, driving loyalty and behavior within our system is another way that we've really mined the information and tried to use that. And then drive marketing. Refer a friend kind of programs that are, I think, among some of the most sophisticated out there about how we allow people to refer Zipcar to their friends and give credit, driving credit to their friends if they want to. So it's been exciting to see, and we have some new ideas we'll be kicking off later this year in that arena as well.
Fantastic.
Good question. Thank you. Next.
My question is actually...
And could you just...
Yes. My name is Aki. I was with a venture fund looking at big data. Then I joined a company, Calpont Corporation. We make InfiniDB. It's a database for analytics on big data. And my question is a little similar but additive. I spend a lot of time, especially at the VC fund, thinking about how to create new business models through analytics and the information advantage. If you think about your revenue and you think about information advantage, how much of your revenue could you attribute to having an information advantage?
Richard?
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I don't know that I could quantify it. I know that there's a double-digit percentage of our business that is saved with an information advantage. That is, understanding more about our membership means that we keep them from fleeing. We know, for example, that if you come to 3 of our quarterly technology meetings, you stay forever. Right, even though it's, or maybe because it's like drinking from a fire hose, sort of like being at MIT. We know, we characterize quite a lot about our members and what, especially those that depart, that drop their essentially annuity memberships with us. So I think we know more about how to avoid losing revenue than perhaps overall keeping revenue. It's certainly in the 15-20% range, however, and it's probably more if I looked at it from the positive viewpoint you're putting it.
Anybody else care to comment? Shouvik?
Yeah, I mean, if you break it up into 3 buckets, right? Content, commerce, and analytics. So from a commerce perspective, the more you're smarter with your information, the more you can drive revenue. And of course, the world is moving to more of content. So it's a lot about usability. If you look at the consumer space, the buying decision is taken so quickly that if you have a very solid mobile device, on which you can sell your products, then you can leverage that. But typically for us, we put it into those 3 buckets to see what percentage can drive revenue.
Scott, I'd like to ask you a question that gentleman was asking, because you were mentioning these other unnamed companies coming in and trying your model. How do you know you have an information advantage? Because you don't see their information. They're not going to open it up.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I ask myself that all the time, and I challenge our team around that. My answer to this question, maybe it's the same as the question you're asking, is in the long run, I think all the revenue kind of belongs to the information side. In the short run, it's hard to quantify. I think you're right. But in the long run, if you're not getting the information equation right, you're going to lose market share. You're going to have a bad experience with your customer. You're probably going to lose profitability versus others. So I think it's a long-run question for us, and so we're making long-term investments. Exactly how to quantify it in the short run is a pretty hard question, though.
Jeff, Markley?
I think it's critical to stay ahead of your competitors. So anything we can do to get that advantage, we will. So listening to the customers and getting information out there is critical.
I think the hard part is going from listening to the customers 40 years ago, which was making sure you're in touch with your field, to mining, which you've got to do today.
Yeah, we didn't even get a chance to talk today about big data and all that. I mean, it's just hopefully during the sessions later today we will. So thank you for that question. Very good. We have a young lady here.
Hi, thank you all. I'm Carrie Sylvester. I'm head of technology for a real estate franchise company. We are going global right now. So based on the discussion on going global and taking our technology platform global, especially Scott and for anyone else who's encountered this as well, when you're talking about localizing so you can set your global strategy, what is that strategy on how much you can change and shift from your model and stay true to who your brand is and localize versus how much you're localizing and trying to stay true to your brand as well? How do you balance that of meeting the global needs and keeping your brand as you're trying to take this global?
Again, great question, and there's no obvious clear answer to this, but I think we start with the customer, and we do market research, we do focus groups, we do surveys as much as we can. Our key goal is to replace car ownership. We don't think of ourselves as a car rental company. That surprises a lot of people. I don't really know that much about car rental. I didn't come out of that industry. I came out of technology and marketing and business strategy consulting. So I think you have to define your business in the way that is going to answer your question. For us, it's if you're trying to replace car ownership and you need to localize that, you've got to localize the type of vehicle that you have, the electronics and the interaction that you're having with that vehicle. Is that mobile? Is it text messaging? I mean, that interaction itself. The price of gas matters a lot. And, we think it's tough here. It's the equivalent of $9 a gallon in most of Europe now. So we have to make adjustments to that. So for us, we really understand what the customer thinks about car ownership, how much it costs, how do they use cars, and then we localize our brand and our technology around that.
Shouvik, could you answer that? That was good comment, Scott. Because you guys are on the marketing side. What would you be response to this young lady?
I think the hardest part, especially as you go global, is how global should you be, right? That's really the question. So if your place along a certain industry, like retail, right, and you have to pick certain markets where you want to go. So for us, as an example, because we are French-based, we decided to leverage the branding of that and move to Asia, but we started out of Hong Kong. A lot of people said go to China first, mainland China, right? And then we decided to go to Korea next. So I think if you look at a framework for decision making, one is in terms of what markets do you really need to be for your current customer base. So for us, we do the same thing, follow the customer. So going back to an earlier question, the metric would be, do you decide that 50% of your current customers, you can serve them globally? And if yes, then how global are your own customer base? So I think that's one, and then is the industry, focus area.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
And we'll go to, is this Clayton Christensen? It looks like Clayton. And then we'll go to this gentleman, and that'll be probably a wrap. Please.
Thank you. Dennis Ringland with Avaya. Struggle out there for CIOs becomes funding, where they get funding for their technology budgets. A lot of times in large organizations, you have the business unit owners that will be convinced to spend money on IT to improve their processes. Do you have any suggestions or ideas in terms of how we increase the CEO's appetite to fund the technology investments that are necessary to improve their businesses? And just as a side, Jeff, I've been to your data center and I highly recommend it. You can give me $20 outside, but how do we increase the CEO's appetite for the spend that's needed?
I mean, sure. I mean, the answer is the same for how do you increase the CEO's appetite for spending on anything, which is show ROI. And I think there's an opportunity as we transition to that OpEx out at the edge of the organization to say, well, we, the IT organization, not through governance and forcing people to do things, but through offering a service that's better than what they can get outside, can make that possible for the people at the pointy end of the organization. And we've all seen it done wrong. You want to buy $15 worth of time of CPU time. Fill out this form, and we'll get back to you in 3 months. That's not going to fly, but I've seen it done. If you can show through a pilot project, for example, that you've got ROI and ROI in abundance to make the transitions that need to be made, whether they're technology transitions like cloud and big data and mobile, or whether they're business decisions like rolling out into another country, you're going to get the investment.
And if I may act as a panelist here, my best advice would be bring the voice of the customer. Like our guests here were talking about customer-facing investments in technology. And from visiting with CIOs, those who can bring that voice of the customer to the decision-making table, so you're my CEO and I'm your CIO, and I come in and say, I want to do this, this, and this, and this, because I've talked to these 4 guys. And you go, no, you can't do that. I said, well, fine, here. You go talk to Richard and Jeff and Scott and Shouvik and tell them we're not doing this at Avaya. So I found that, and what that also puts an onus on, that's not the right word, responsibility or an opportunity, if you will, is if you're not spending 25% of your time or more with customers as a senior IT exec or a CIO, you're leaving money on the table in terms of investment. So don't sell vitamins, because that's what we all do, basically. We sell vitamins. Gee, I didn't take my D3 today, I'm not going to die. But if I have a headache and Soley has a pill, I'm not going to say, how much is it going to cost? $20 for my headache? No, I'm just going to take it and I'll pay it. So voice the customer.
And bring in somebody really enthusiastic with you, like Muhammad.
Yeah, Scott. And then we'll get to this gentleman here, and then we'll do a wrap.
We do something interesting here that maybe is insightful for other folks in the room. When I first came into the company, there was a lot of confusion about the business model and how to serve customers and all. David Varel, who's over here, is one of our early investors, so David will enjoy this story from 2003. We didn't have an outsourced member services team. We didn't have an in-sourced member services team. We all did member services. We literally had a cell phone that we took home at night and waited.
Sleeping with your smartphone.
You had to sleep with this phone. And the insight that came from that is today, I still invite every employee in the company, and particularly the technology team and the information and IT teams, to sit on calls with customers and even interact with the customer. If somebody's calling up and explaining the challenge they're having with our service, there is no better learning experience. There's no better way to create passion for an initiative that needs to get done to solve a problem than to have them sit in front of a customer or have them on the phone. And we've done that, and it's been amazingly insightful for our technology teams.
Thank you, Scott. That was well said, and I don't want to cut you off, but we have a minute and a half for this last question.
Okay, well, I'm Charlie Best with Hewlett-Packard, so I'll give you a wrap-up kind of question of if there was one topic or skill set that the CIO needs to convey to the CEO, what would it be?
Let's go right down to quickly. What's the one skill set that a CIO needs to be a CEO? Shouvik?
Understanding marketing platforms.
Scott?
I think just really understanding the business strategy and making a business case. Really
Jeff Markley?
I think creating business value.
Dr. Soley?
Absolutely. Creating business value, understanding the strategy of the company.
All right, we're going to leave it at that. Dr. Richard Soley of the OMG Group, Jeff Barkley from the Barkley Data Center Group, Scott Griffin from Zipcar, and Shouvik Bhattacharyya from Valtech. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, audience.